What is up, everybody? Shwayze here, and I'm incredibly excited because in today's video, we're talking top 10 incredible features of the 2023 Dodge Challenger Demon 170. Okay, so the Dodge Demon 170. This is a vehicle that really needs no introduction because this is the most famous muscle car of all time. Now, before we dive into today's video, I do want to extend a huge thank you to Johnny Anderson for giving me the opportunity to review his vehicle. If you guys are interested in seeing some more photos of this vehicle, some more content, check out his Instagram. I'm going to put it down on the screen at the bottom. It's Johnny_Anderson15. Again, huge thank you to him for letting me review this beautiful ride of his. Now, this is the 2023 Dodge Challenger SRT Demon 170, and it is the first ever 1,000 plus horsepower production Hemi engine. And it's also the most powerful and the quickest production vehicle Dodge has ever made. In fact, this is actually the quickest vehicle 0 to 60 that you can buy. We'll talk about the specs here in just a minute, but yes, this is quicker 0 to 60 than a Tesla Model S Plaid. Now, this vehicle is truly an engineering marvel, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the top 10 features that you need to know about the Demon 170. And in no particular order, but probably the most important, we're going to jump under the hood and talk about the first cool feature. All right, so under the hood of the Demon 170 is a magnificent engine, and it is all new for the Demon 170. I mean, the only thing this vehicle shares with the Red Eye and the other Hellcat engines out there is the camshaft. Everything else has been changed. Everything else has been updated. In the development of this engine, Dodge admitted to the public that it was blowing up engines because there was so much pressure inside of the engine. So this thing was literally exploding as they were producing it, and then they finally worked it out. And we're going to talk about all the specs here. But first off, I want to point out the air intake. This is an updated new throttle body. We're talking 105 millimeters. It's massive. I mean, my entire head could probably fit inside of this air inlet. Now, this new throttle body can provide upwards of 33% more airflow into this giant engine. Also, another update as compared to the Hellcat is a new 3.02-inch pulley. And this new pulley allows for 40% more boost pressure from that supercharger as compared to the Red Eye. So the Red Eye does about 15.3 PSI of boost, whereas here in the Demon 170, you get 21.3 PSI of boost from that supercharger. And that is part of the reason why the engines were exploding. There's just a lot of boost going on inside of that engine. Now, cylinder pressure is 32% higher than that in the Red Eye. We're talking a whopping 2,500 PSI of pressure inside of the cylinder chamber. It's absolutely insane. Now, in order to manage all of this power, the increased airflow, the increased boost pressure, the fuel injectors on this vehicle were updated to the point where you can actually get 164 gallons of fuel per hour from these fuel injectors. In case you're wondering, that's more than the average US shower head. So this thing can pour more gasoline into the cylinder than your shower head can pour water into your bathtub. It's just crazy, the specs on this vehicle. All right, now the second thing you should know about the Demon 170 are the numbers, in case you already didn't know. We're talking a 6.2 liter V8 with the supercharger, but this supercharger isn't just your regular supercharger from the Hellcat, which is a 2.3 liter, or even the Red Eye or the previous generation Demon, which is a 2.7 liter. The supercharger on this is pretty much directly off the Elephant Crate engine. It's a 3 liter supercharger, and combined with that 6.2 liter V8, this thing produces 1,025 horsepower and 945 pound-feet of torque.
You serious, Clark?
Now, keep in mind, that is on E85 fuel, and we'll talk about what that is, but it's ethanol fuel, and that's where you can get that amount of horsepower. Now, you can use pump gas on this thing as well. You can just go to your regular gas station, pump this up with your 91 or 93 octane, and in that scenario, it only produces 900 horsepower, only 900 horsepower, and 810 pound-feet of torque, still far above what the previous Demon produced at 840. Truly remarkable what they were able to do with this engine. Now, all of that power is sent through a revised 8-speed automatic transmission, and that's sent to the rear wheels. There's no all-wheel drive version of the Demon 170, but it really doesn't need it. Couple more touches to point out under the hood. I do like that Demon badge that is said to be actually magnetic, so you can remove it and put it in different places and put it on display. And then this one, of course, being the last of the last call, number 7, this shows you your Challenger last call badge with where it was built and where it was designed. Okay, now the third thing you should know about this this vehicle is why exactly is it called the Demon 170? Might be hard to tell on camera, but there is a 170 tattoo at the bottom of this Demon logo. Why is that? Well, there are two reasons. The first is because this 3-liter supercharger is pretty much directly off of the Elephant crate engine. That engine was called the Elephant C170. So it's kind of a connection to the engine where this supercharger comes from. But I think the second and the bigger reason as to why it's called 170 is 170 actually stands for 170 proof. And what that means is it's 170 proof alcohol. And 170 proof alcohol is just 100% alcohol. And the reason it's called that is because this vehicle produces those horsepower figures that I quoted to you earlier on ethanol fuel. And ethanol is an alcohol substance typically made from corn. And for that reason, the name really signifies the fuel mixture that this vehicle runs on to produce that insane amount of horsepower. Okay, so remember when I mentioned that this thing will produce that amount of horsepower on E85 fuel? What exactly does that mean for those of you that don't know? Well, E85 is ethanol fuel, but it's a certain ratio. E85 requires anywhere from 51 to 83% of your fuel mixture to be based on ethanol, to have ethanol within that fuel. Now, why this is important and why they chose ethanol is a couple reasons. First off, ethanol has a really high octane rating, and high octane is very important because it reduces engine knock. Now, for those of you that have experienced this in the past, essentially what happens is because the pressure in that cylinder is so high, we're talking 2,500 PSI, there is a chance that before the spark plug actually detonates the fuel and ignites it, the pressure itself will make a mini explosion inside of your cylinder. That's called engine knock. It's essentially a premature ignition inside of the engine block. And you know, when it happens a lot, it actually damages your engine, and there's specific knock sensors within your engine to limit the amount of horsepower and compression so that it reduces the chance of engine knock from occurring. That's part of the reason why they were exploding these engines when they were building them. There's just so much pressure. So they had to figure out how to get this higher octane fuel, because high octane fuel typically has lower engine knock because it's able to be pressurized higher without prematurely exploding. Now, the Demon used race gas, which is anything octane 100 and above, to be able to achieve its 840 horsepower. But the Demon 170 uses ethanol for a couple reasons. For one, ethanol is typically easier to find. Race gas is kind of hard to come by. It's not everywhere, whereas ethanol fuel is a little bit more common. The second reason is it's technically more environmentally friendly. Ethanol is typically produced from corn, and corn is technically a carbon capture because it's a plant that captures carbon from the air and then it produces fuel. And so it's kind of a way to say it's a little bit more efficient. Now, I say technically because ethanol itself actually packs a little bit less energy than typical gas. And so in order to produce the same amount of horsepower to go the same amount of distance, you actually have to use about 25% more ethanol than you would gasoline. So yes, it's more efficient in the sense that you're using a vegetable to power your vehicle, but you require a lot more of those vegetables to be able to get from point A to point B. So for that reason, it's not the most efficient, and the fuel economy on this is not very good at all, but it's used in this application because it is just a little bit easier to find and generally a little bit less expensive than race gas. Now, I do want to interrupt this video and tell you all about Octane Coffee Company. It is the car-themed coffee company for car enthusiasts, and I purposefully picked the Octane 105 for this particular vehicle because how fitting is race gas octane for the Demon 170. If you guys are interested in picking up your car-themed coffee, make sure you check out octanecoffeecompany.com for the variety of different roasts, from big block to race gas to the goat. I am sure you'll find a roast that fits your mood. You can get 10% off your first order using promo code Octane10. Now let's get back to the video. Now, since ethanol is primarily made from corn, there are some nice touches to the Demon 170 that are different than all the other Hellcat or Red Eye engines. First off, you'll notice you have actually a yellow engine block, and that is typically orange on Hellcat engines, but it's yellow on the Demon 170 because, well, corn is yellow. The other thing to point out is typically the Red Eye Hellcats would have a red jewel on the badge of the Hellcat Red Eye or the Demon that came before, but on this one, it's actually a yellow jewel, and that is because, well, this runs on corn. The other thing to point out is the brake calipers. Yes, they're black, but you'll see the SRT badging is actually yellow, and that's because this runs on ethanol. Now, in case you're worried about finding ethanol in your local area, you don't actually need it. This vehicle's powertrain control module, the PCM, will actually be able to detect how much ethanol percentage is in your gas tank and reduce the amount of power as necessary to prevent engine knock. If it detects about 20% ethanol, there is actually a little gas icon on the dashboard on the inside that will light up white. If it detects more than 65%, that little gas icon will light up blue, and that's when you know you have the full 1025 horsepower. And now is actually a good time to hit that pause button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly videos. That really helps me out to bring more amazing cars like this onto the channel. All right, now let's get back to the video. All right, now the fourth thing you should know about this vehicle are some of the numbers. So first off, let's talk quarter mile times. This vehicle is actually banned by the National Hot Rod Association, the NHRA, because the quarter mile time is just too quick, and it doesn't come with a parachute or a roll cage from the factory, although you can get it in the aftermarket from Direct Connection itself, which is associated with Dodge. But we're talking an 8.91 second quarter mile at 151.17 miles per hour. This is actually the first factory production car to run under a 9-second quarter mile at 8.91 seconds. All right, now for the 0 to 60, you guys might want to take a seat, especially if you're a Tesla fanboy. We're talking 0 to 60 in a head-snapping 1.66 seconds. This is the highest G-force producing car of any other production vehicle. We're talking 2.004 G-forces inside of the cabin. That means this is twice the force of gravity when you're accelerating 0 to 60. Now, the fifth thing you should know about the Demon 170 has to do with its wheels and tires and its brake setup. First off, you've got 4-piston lightweight Brembos, and in terms of the wheel and tire setup here, you've got 18-inch wheels in the front and smaller 17-inch wheels in the back. Now, on the front, these are 245 millimeter wide, versus in the back, these are 315 millimeter wide tires. Now, these tires were specifically designed for the Demon 170. We're talking Mickey Thompson ET Street R drag radials, and they're meant to get you the most amount of flex, the most amount of wrinkle when you're accelerating this thing on a drag strip. And they look incredible if you've ever seen them in action. Now, Dodge did also sell carbon fiber wheels as an option on the Demon 170. It was about a $12,000 option, but it was meant to be more lightweight than these stock wheels to get you even better acceleration at the drag strip, because the less weight you have, the quicker your vehicle is going to be. Is it worth $12,000? I'll leave that up to you. Now, in order to fit this large sidewall on the rear tires, the suspension actually had to be modified. In fact, the Bilstein adaptive suspension on the rear tires is actually 10 millimeters higher in the back than your typical Challenger, and they had to do that in order to fit this large sidewall. The thicker the sidewall, the more traction you're going to have when you're accelerating. Now, the suspension overall has been modified because when you're at a drag strip and you're talking about a rear-wheel drive vehicle, you're going to try to get as much of that weight in the back. And in a vehicle that has about a 60-40 split, meaning 60% of the weight is in the front, 40% in the back, you're going to have to do whatever you can to be able to move all of that power to the rear wheels. And Dodge thought of that with the drag mode suspension in order to get as much weight in the back. They did that by adjusting the front springs to be 35% softer than your standard red-eye Challenger, and the rear is about 28% softer. And so by doing so, when you're accelerating, you're going to have more of that weight transferring to the back than your typical Challenger or Charger red-eye. Now, the next thing you should know about this vehicle is the rear end. Let's talk about what they did in order to be able to put that power to the ground and not damage anything in the process. First off, the drive shaft of this vehicle is 30% stronger than that in the previous generation Demon. Next up, they used larger 240 millimeter ring and pinion gears and used hot isostatic pressing housings to eliminate porosity and make that rear differential even stronger. They also used larger and stronger CV joints to be able to put that power to the ground, and the case depth of that rear differential is about 53% stronger than the differentials that came before it. So this thing from front to back has been re-engineered and redesigned to provide more strength through all of the components underneath. Now, the next thing you should know about this vehicle is the fact that this thing went on a diet as compared to the previous 2018 Demon. In fact, the Demon 170 is about 157 pounds lighter than the Red Eye, and they accomplish this in a few different ways. First off, you can see up front, they actually removed the wide body fender flares on the front as compared to the back. The reason they did this is by removing these front fender flares, they actually saved about 16 pounds from the weight of the vehicle. Next up, if you did opt for the carbon fiber wheels, you'd shave about 20 pounds off the front and about 12 pounds off the back. They also used lightweight front brakes, hollow sway bars. You can option this vehicle without a passenger or a rear seat option. They also used lightweight carpeting on the inside. The base Demon also only comes with a 2-speaker audio system, and the base Demon also didn't come with this carpeting on the top of the trunk. All of that combined added for some extra weight savings. Now, unfortunately, all of that weight savings means that you're probably going to have a less comfortable ride on the inside. It's going to be louder, and you're not going to be able to drone out some of that loudness with a good audio system, because 2 speakers is just about how much I have on my phone. But you are going to be roasting some tires at the drag strip, and you're going to be beating a lot of vehicles because of that weight savings. All right, for the next thing you should know about this vehicle is the design, because like I pointed out earlier, it is a little bit different than the Red Eye or the Demon. First off, like I said, you don't have wide body front fender flares, which really makes sense because the power is sent to the rear wheels. This is a rear wheel drive car, and so it really didn't need to have wide body front fender flares. I mean, maybe it's more stable at the track, but for a drag strip setting, which is what this vehicle is designed for, it's really not necessary. Now, the front end continues to have something very similar to what the Demon that came before it had, which is this air grabber hood. It's this large air intake, which provides even more air inflow into the engine. But because this one is ethanol powered, you might be able to see here there is some writing where it says alcohol injected on the front end. That's because this is running on E85. Now, another odd but kind of interesting thing about this vehicle is all previous generation Hellcats and Demons came with the logo of the vehicle over here inside of this headlight housing. Whereas this one, on the other hand, actually has a direct connection logo on the inside because, well, this vehicle is pretty much the direct connection car. And direct connection is where you can buy different tunes, you can buy the parachute for this vehicle, the roll cage. It's kind of like an aftermarket parts department, but it's located within Dodge, so it's not really aftermarket. But it's kind of odd that they have this direct connection logo located inside of the headlight housing. However, similar to all other Challenger Hellcats and Red Eyes and Demons out there, you do have the air inlet coming in from the driver's side headlight. Interestingly enough, the passenger side is still blocked out with a piece of plastic on the other end. Now let's jump inside and talk about the styling there, but first off, I want to show off the key. You can only get this vehicle with the red key. There's no black key option because, well, the vehicle is meant for drag racing. What I do like is this is your typical key over here, but the Demon logo is kind of a throwback to the original 1970s Demon. Actually, the owner of this vehicle showed that to me and kind of let me know that this is a little bit of an evolution of the 1970s design. But I do like how they have that Demon badging on the back of the key. Now let's jump inside and talk about the interior. All right, so taking a look on the inside, this is actually a very familiar place because they really didn't update anything as compared to the previous generation Demon or really any other Challenger out there. Now, the owner of this particular vehicle optioned for the full leather seat and full seat option. So even though the rear seats have been removed as you're looking at them on the screen right now, that's actually a rear seat delete option. The vehicle did come with rear seats, but in order to make it a little bit more lightweight, he's chosen to remove them, but he does have those in his garage and you can always put them back. This is honestly how I would option this vehicle, because if you get this with the standard cloth seat and one seat option that this vehicle comes with from the factory, you really are kind of sacrificing a couple things in terms of resale value, because most people are really going to want to have at least 2 passenger seats up front and maybe the option to add seats in the back in case they have kids. So personally, I would order it the exact same way. Also, I think if you're paying over $100,000 for a vehicle, you really shouldn't get a cloth seat, but that's just my personal opinion. Also, if you don't get the passenger seat option, although you can add a passenger seat later, you're not going to be able to add the safety systems for it. So the passenger airbag would be disabled if you get the 1-seat option. So just keep that in mind. Not that you can really order one anymore anyways. Starting off with the door panel, I do like this one has the leather touch surfaces over here. It actually reminds me a lot of my Hellcat. Nice premium materials. You got suede over here, almost identical to my car. Nice contrast stitching. Typical door handle over here for your Challengers. And then this one did come with the 18-speaker audio system instead of the 2-speaker audio system on the base one. Also, it's cool. Mine doesn't have memory seats, but this one does. They are power-operated seats. They got suede over here in the middle, leather over here, some more contrast stitching, and then you got your Demon logo over there with the Tattoo 170 located underneath it. Pretty cool. Now, jumping inside this vehicle, very familiar place because I sit in this vehicle almost every single day. Now, this one does come with this cool carbon fiber trim piece inside. It does reduce a little bit of weight on the interior, and it also looks pretty cool. I like the design of that. This one does come with the suede steering wheel. On the left-hand side is how you're going to control your 7-inch gauge cluster display. On the right-hand side is how you have your cruise control settings. No adaptive cruise control here, but you do have the red backlit SRT logo in the middle. Let's turn this vehicle on. So it sounds kind of similar to my car, but a little bit different when you turn it on. Now, I do like the paddle shifters on the left and the right-hand side, and take a look at these gauges. It goes all the way up to 220 miles per hour, and they look a little bit different, I gotta say, than the Hellcat. I think there's a little bit more red to them than what I have in my car, but maybe I'm just not used to it. Now, on the left-hand side, you have your typical headlight controls, and then you've got more of that carbon fiber trim piece that goes all the way to your 8.4-inch Uconnect screen. It's still the same screen and same software that you have on my car. It's getting a little bit outdated, but this vehicle isn't meant for that. And then you have your typical red engine start stop button. Down below that, you have your quick access buttons for your launch control, your trans brake, which we'll talk about in just a minute, and you got your physical climate control settings as well, and nice leather touch surfaces all throughout. I do like that this particular one does come with the suede headliner. Feels really nice on the inside, and no sunroof on this, but that's really because Dodge was charging a huge arm and a leg to be able to get a sunroof option, because they really didn't want owners buying one. All right, now the next thing you should know about this vehicle is some of the built-in software and track settings that the Demon 170 comes with. First off, if you go into your SRT dashboard, this is where you can pull up your 3 only drive modes: drag, custom, and auto. There's no eco mode, there's no sport mode, because this thing is really meant for one main thing, and that is drag racing. Now, there are some other things baked in here that came on the Demon that came before it. First off, you have launch control here where you can set the RPM and launch the vehicle. Now, one thing to mention about the launch control here is it's meant to reduce the amount of wheel hop when you're accelerating. So it's not a foolproof system, but it's meant to allow for slightly better launches at the drag strip. But I want to talk about some more things. So if you hit drag options, you actually pull up a long list of different items here. First off, you have line lock, where the brakes will actually lock the front tires, not the rear ones, so you can warm them up and burn out essentially for fun without having to really damage the rear brakes or stand on them for a while. Now, the next thing is trans brake, and that is a really useful feature for those of you that actually do drag racing. And in this particular vehicle, it's actually trans brake 2.0, and it allows for multiple launch profile settings. So you can actually adjust where your amount of torque should be depending on which gear you're in, and depending on the time as you're accelerating off of the drag strip. So this is kind of an advancement or an evolution of what you had in the trans brake from the Dodge Demon. You can also see how much torque you had when you are shifting gears from first to second and from second to third. So lots of stuff baked in here. Now, you also have the chiller function here, where this vehicle will actually use the air conditioning inside of the car to cool off the air that's going into that intercooler for optimal air intake temperature. Because as I'm sure you know, the colder the temperature, the better these vehicles run, the more power they can produce, because the air is compressed. You get a little bit more air into the engine, which means a little bit more horsepower. You also have the shift light over here, and then you have the race cool down feature, which will assist in using the air conditioning to cool down the temperature of the engine when you're doing multiple runs on the racetrack. This thing really has one purpose, and that is having the best 0 to 60 and quarter-mile time of any vehicle on the market. All right, folks, and the last thing you should know about the Demon 170 is the price and the amount that they're going to be producing. So they haven't released exactly how much were produced, but as of last week, the final Demon 170 was rolled off the assembly line. They're not going to make any more after December 21st or 22nd of 2023. Now, initially, they projected about 3,000 units here in the US and 300 internationally. In terms of pricing started at $96,666. You got the 3 sixes, actually 4 sixes in there to kind of indicate that this is a Demon, of course. Now, in terms of pricing, that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because I don't know if really anybody who probably paid that $96,666 MSRP sticker price. A lot of dealers out there were charging markups, and even though Dodge tried to prevent it, there really wasn't a good way to prevent people from paying markups on this vehicle. But that being said, this vehicle is the last American muscle car, specifically from Dodge. I mean, they're not going to be producing V8 Hemi engines in the future. They've already made that clear. There's going to be inline sixes, turbochargers, hybrids, maybe electrification, but there's not going to be a big gas-guzzling 6.2 liter supercharged V8 under the hood. And for that reason, this vehicle is probably going to be a collector car. Those that pick these vehicles up over the last couple months could probably flip it and make money on it, because there's only about 3,300, potentially less, out on the market, and that is as many as as they're ever going to make. So for those of you that did pick one of these vehicles up, I'm sure you're very satisfied with it, because this is truly an engineering marvel and the last of its kind. Now, to finish off this video, we're actually going to jump into the passenger seat, and Johnny's going to take us for a ride. So let's cut to that right now. All right, so we're here with the owner, Johnny. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to review the vehicle, and we're going to go on a little ride where I'm going to scream like a little child or a little girl. We'll see what happens. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, she gets on a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say. So, for those of you that don't know, Johnny's actually owned quite a few different Mopars. So he comes from a background of having experience with these vehicles. He's had a Hellcat, he had a TRX, he also had a Demon before this one, so the 2018 Demon. So I've been dying to ask you, how do they all compare? Which one's your favorite? And what's the biggest difference between them?
You know, nobody has ever put 1,025 horsepower in any muscle production car. 2018 Demon compared to this is just absolutely so different.
Really?
I can't remember if you have ever ridden in the 2018 or...
I don't believe I have. No, I think just standard stock Hellcat.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, you know, we're going over bumps right now. I mean, the suspension is just unreal. In the 2018, you were always getting pulled one way or to the other. That was because the 315s all the way around.
I noticed that even in mine. It feels like, you know, those big wheels or tires up front, you kind of sway on the road sometimes because they just take up so much of that road, the asphalt. You kind of have to grapple with the wheels sometimes to control it.
Yep. And this one is just, you know, I think Dodge did it right with the Mickey Thompsons on your regular Hellcats. Come with the Pirelli P0 Neros. Yeah. They suck.
Yeah, they suck.
But, you know, that's what the street cars tend to really like. The road eats these drag tires up a little bit quicker. But yeah, by far, I mean, through all my experience with SRT vehicles, this 170 has definitely been the most comfortable ride, packing 1,025 horsepower.
You heard it there first, folks. This is actually a comfortable 1,000 plus horsepower vehicle, and I don't think could have ever imagined to be sitting in a car like this with leather seats and all this, you know, amenities, ventilated seats, and at the same time you have the quickest 0 to 60 vehicle that you can buy, the fastest in a quarter mile. I mean, it's crazy, and it's sad that this is the last of its kind. I did want to ask you, are you excited to see what Dodge is producing next? Or are you kind of in the boat where you're skeptical about it, or maybe against it, of what they've kind of voiced as maybe what they're producing next?
So for Dodge, you know, we've all seen the new Banshee. It's going to be quite interesting what they come out with, because from what we've all been heard and told is there's going to be these power packs that you're going to be able to do anywhere from 500 to 900 plus, from what I remember. Yeah. I typically myself am not a fan of EVs. I still think they have their capabilities, and you know, it's kind of just what the new world is coming to. Unfortunately, it's just kind of sad to kind of see these go.
You know, for me, what impresses me the most about my car, and I mean, this one's leagues above it, but what's crazy, when you compare it to an electric vehicle, they have great acceleration, but their power starts coming off after, you know, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. This thing, it's like it doubles the power. After those speeds, it's just like endless power. It's almost like you're on top of a dragon that's just, you know, flying through the air. It's crazy. Power delivery of an internal combustion engine, especially a supercharged one, as compared to electric. Electric have great 0 to 60s, but they taper off, whereas in these, that's really where they just get started. And that's crazy. It's hella fun. If you ever experienced any supercharged Hellcat engine, It's phenomenal. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Again, huge thank you to Johnny for letting me review his badass muscle car back here. If you guys enjoyed today's video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. Also check me out on all the social media at Schwazy_. Until next time, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.